All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us. I think we all know what we're here for, but we're here for a great session. We were just sidebarring, all of the panelists and I, and super excited about all this great information that we're going to be sharing over these next few minutes. So we'll be talking about that of the one of the big mega trends in our industry, which is what's the state of the residential slash that of the security market. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm David Morgan, co-founder of SD Marketing. Very excited to be here today. A little bit about us. We're a marketing agency for the industry, and we work with dealers, integrators, manufacturers, and groups that provide services throughout the entire country, actually even outside the country. We've been around for 11 years and super excited about today. This is not about me. This is all about our panelists. So with that said, I'd like to turn things over here to a very good friend of mine. For those of you that don't know Elizabeth Parks, and if this is the first time that you've heard her speak, I hope that you have your notes, your notepad ready, because she's going to share some invaluable insights here shortly in terms of where it is that we are, the state of the smart home market. So Elizabeth, over to you.
Okay, great. I hope you can hear me okay and you can see my slides.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, thank you so much, David, for that introduction and for the invitation to join today. My name is Elizabeth Parks. I'm the President and Chief Marketing Officer of Parks Associates. We are a market research and consulting company studying all things emerging tech for the consumer and small to medium business marketplaces. So the security industry is one of the most favorite that we study. And so today I'm going to share just a few data points to help set the stage for the discussion we're going to have with the panelists. So let me get going and just start off with where we're at in home security. We've seen the continued adoption of home security systems now in 36% of all households, and have been tracking this for decades, really, and really a huge jump as a result of some of the DIY solutions that have been introduced into the market. We also see a future that is reliant on monitoring and services, and the catalysts helping drive this growth coming from the introduction of the tech giants getting into this market a few years back, the continued growth of connected devices in the home, those DIY solutions specific to the safety and security side, and then a lot of advancements and innovation in video technology, particularly around video verification, artificial intelligence. We see overall that the state of the industry is strong with continued adoption of all connected products, including smart home devices, but also continued growth of high purchase intentions. And so as we look at the growth of devices, I want to make sure we know what we're talking about. These are the different devices that we're tracking in the smart home space. One thing notable that we don't consider the smart speaker a smart home device. It's a speaker, and its main purpose is to play music. And so we categorize that over in the entertainment side of the house. The factors, though, that are in play and fueling the market are many, really, over the past few years, including the impact of COVID, but also lower prices that we're seeing on products, the increased familiarity, understanding the value proposition that smart home devices bring to consumers at home. Big, huge investments coming in from private equity, a lot of mergers and acquisitions taking place, particularly in the alarm and monitoring industry, and various integrations that are driving new services, for instance, security and vehicles having integration there with security. So this is going to continue to be a market that's expanded, and really that is being driven by choice that consumers have now with being able to buy standalone devices that have monitoring, professional monitoring, self-monitoring, or full systems that have no monitoring or professional monitoring. So the traditional players, as well as the smart home device manufacturers, really are looking at blurred lines and creating all sorts of new choice for consumers. We also see growing concerns for safety and security, and as well as large investments that consumers are making in their home. So anxieties are up, and consumers are willing to pay for those protections around their home, whether they're there or not. Also, the growth of second homes and shifts in where people are living is also creating new demand for security solutions. We also know that the smart home device owners, these are the people that are early adopters. They're going out and buying more of these devices in a phenomenon of device stacking, and then really getting to a point where once a smart home device owner has 6 to 8 devices in their home, they really are looking for a controller for the unification of these different systems and for that one point of control. And that really does bring us to where it's all at. And this is, who is going to have control of that home? Will that come from an ISP, a security provider, perhaps a single manufacturer? This is something that we continue to watch closely, and specifically talking to consumers about that idea of a one brand household. At the top, though, it's very notable that security companies are considered the trusted provider for consumers with their data. That puts you all of the dealers in a really unique position to deliver and service consumers at home with all the different services that are coming, and even more that will be introduced. The fear that professional providers and service providers somehow will go away, I think is unwarranted. We've seen the continued demand for professional installers in the home. There certainly is a segment of consumers who are willing to do things themselves and go out and buy products and perhaps install them themselves. But also we see that this growth in single device ownership is still going to drive professional installation. So this slide is showing that adoption for specific safety devices across the board is in that 12 to 15% range. And we know that overall 37% of households have at least one smart home device. When consumers get these devices, like I said, many of them will install them themselves, but many of them will not, right? And so here are some data points showing the professional installation for what some may consider a DIY type of product. This really is opening the door for security dealers to introduce professional services and really, again, expand that market. We're going to continue to see this growth occur as we see more devices get attached to systems. These systems are enabling those future services, which are, again, the incremental revenues that will add on to the monthly base, and that's where the money's at. That's where private equity is really jumping in the game. So I hope this information is useful in showing where some of the growth is going to be in the future and where adoption is now. Of course, if anybody has any questions about Parks Associates research, very active on LinkedIn, and feel free to reach out to me at any time. David, I hope that gives you a good overview to set the stage for our conversation today with the panel. I think you might be on mute.
Yeah, thank you very much, Elizabeth. You're 100% correct. It's interesting, as you're sharing with us, I'm actually jotting down a lot of notes myself. And it's a couple of key takeaways are these big numbers of 25 going from 25 to 36% in terms of the adoption rate, right? One of the first slides that you'd referenced, there were 15 smart home device categories. And the key here is when we take into consideration that of all of the offerings that we work with that of the end user customers that we work with, which of these categories are we participating in? And I'll finish with this, right? Or a couple of things, right? Security companies are at the top of the heap with nearly 45%. Like the end user is expecting for a security company to offer these things. It's all about layering services. It's like, how do we as security companies be more like this kind of device, whereas the end user is almost like reliant on us? Because as you layer services, you provide more value, it drives more RMR. So thank you very much, Elizabeth. Really appreciate that. So Quentin, I'd like to transition over to you. If you wouldn't mind quickly introducing yourself, and also want to give a very big special thanks to Residio for helping to sponsor today's webinar. If you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about yourself, a little bit about Residio, and also I'd love for you to share your thoughts in terms of where we are in the current state of the residential market slash the smart home.
Sure. Thanks, David. Great stuff, Elizabeth. Always pick up one or two things like David just from that data, but really exciting stuff. And let me just start off by saying I see opportunity everywhere in the smart home. But again, my name is Quentin Gunther. I am with Residio. I actually manage our Residio Premier Security Dealer Program. It's our loyalty program that's been part of us. God, goes in our DNA back 30 years to the first alert days, but very proud to be a sales leader for that piece. Just a little bit about Residio real quick, David, for those maybe not familiar. We spun off from Honeywell back in 2018, and I think we are uniquely positioned for the smart home. We literally like to say that not only do we have those devices that are hanging on the wall that people see each and every day, but we're also putting those devices in behind the walls too, across our comfort, our energy security, our thermal control solutions, our software, all of that taking advantage of this. But, the trends then, and, for the audience out there, this has been a very lively topic for all of us. For my team, I manage our dealer development group team. This is a group of professionals that are out there working with dealers every day as we look at new opportunities and really how to implement them. And I would say the smart home has been a huge topic, right? And I would say that as an industry, I think we're still trying to figure out, how do we make money at this, right? We're looking at these new products and services. We know it's going to be a change in maybe the way we go to market. It's going to be maybe a change in some of our technical skills. It may require us to learn some new things. But I think everybody understands there's definitely an opportunity here. And it goes to your point when you held up that device. I think for our industry, the smart home, the devices, the things that we can offer are going to make us like that phone, right? I look at just the way my wife and family use our home now. We still love the peace of mind that we get when we go to bed at night, and we know we're protected from the dangers of fire and burglary. But I tell you what, now having that device on our hip that lets us check things each and every day, see when the kids get home, see what the dogs are doing, see that the packages arrived okay at the front door, being able to set music and different things, we are very much becoming reliant on that smart home and the products and things that we can do today.
No, absolutely, completely agree with that, Quentin. It's, and like with that said, it's going to be interesting as to when we look at things 12 months from now, 24, 36 months from now, to see as to like the types of data sets that Elizabeth shared as to where it is that we are. So, one thing that I didn't reference a couple minutes ago is we want to make sure that today's session is as invaluable as possible for each and every single one of us. And we know that your time is very, very valuable. We'd love for this to be interactive. So with that said, in the chat, if you can reference one, if you currently work with residential end users, and a 2 if you don't, if you wouldn't mind going to the chat and just entering a 1 if you do work with the residential or the smart home market currently, or 2 if you don't, we'd greatly appreciate that. And then I also, if anyone in the chat if anyone in the chat is really appreciated what it is that Elizabeth and Quentin just shared, if you can just type in love in the chat, we'd really appreciate that as well. So I'm going to actually start that off by saying love. Like, that was some great information. So we'll continue moving forward, but we'd love for this to be interactive. There also is the chat. There also is the Q&A. So as we go through these next few minutes, we're going to have this interactive, we're going to have a number of questions that I'll be running through here in just the next few minutes. But any questions that you have for the panelists, feel free to go ahead and interject that. And Jake, wanted to say thank you very much to Jake Full. I 100% agree with you. Excellent info as always, Elizabeth. Thank you. So ditto, and I echo that, Jake. So thank you very much. So as we transition, I'd like to bring Greg front and center. And Greg, I know that many in the audience, many in the audience may know Elizabeth, may know Jason, may know Quentin, but many may not know you. So
Yeah.
if it's not too much trouble, because you've got a very unique perspective in terms of, you've got a very unique perspective in terms of where it is that you are in relative to where you are in the market. So if you wouldn't mind quickly sharing a little bit about yourself,
Sure.
your group, and then ultimately walking us through where you believe the state of the smart home is from your perspective, that'd be great.
Well, I appreciate that, David, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here today with everybody. I am my name is Greg Sredi. I'm the home technology manager at In Charge Electric. We're an electric company. We're also a Resideo premier dealer, and we install security for our builders and their clients. And we've been doing that for the better part of 7 years on the low voltage and home technology side. We made our bones in high voltage, in electric, working here in Texas, in all the major markets. And so as an electrical company, Quentin touched on it, one, to diversify our ability to offer clients what it is that's in their home. And we had a really unique opportunity to position ourselves to open up a design services division to meet with clients before the build happens. And that's a really unique space to be in now, to talk with customers, because everyone has a different idea of what a smart home is. Some people may be focused on their security. Some people may be focused on their network. Some people may be focused on the entertainment side, and not everyone is wanting to put all dollars towards all those things. And so to have a fleet of trained design service members that can talk with clients, talk with builders, and really customize each home to work for them. That's kind of really how we have grown our ability to help our clients, whether they're be the builders and or the people that are buying their homes.
Yeah, thank you, Greg. It's interesting as you and I have had some recent discussions and some sidebarring. I mean, you'd shared with me, and maybe you can add to this a little bit about your group in terms of the growth that you've seen over these last few years, and the real emphasis that you and your group are like you're doubling or triple or even quadruple downing on what it is that we're discussing today. So if you wouldn't mind just maybe quickly speaking a little
Sure.
bit about that.
Absolutely. So at 7 years ago, we were not even at all in the connected home space or the smart home space. That was not, we were just a straight electrical company until they made the decision to invest in these types of services. And so you're looking at zero at that time. And now we're close to around 1,000 houses a month, which is pretty incredible to get those types of numbers across all of our branches, and to provide our builders with those types of services. And so we're seeing that even, spike up as the market, may be stagnant, or we may think that it's not going to stay as strong. Builders are wanting to provide these types of services for their clients as the demand is there. As more and more millennials start buying homes, they expect these types of services to be in their home. So it comes from a space that is really in high demand, and is just becoming more and more required in a new home. And we're really seeing evidence of that as we put more and more smart home technology in every home that we wire.
No, fantastic. And one last point, because I want to make sure that everyone just caught this. Like, number one, you're an independent group. And number two, can you share with us once again, you literally just, I don't want to overemphasize this, but like as of 6-7 years ago, you were not offering things in this space. And at the end of this year, what's the number that you're projecting to install in this year?
So we will be in 24,000 houses as far as our electrical services go. We'll wire 24,000 rooftops here in the state of Texas, and We just acquired a company in Florida, so those numbers will probably come in the year after. And we're just about into 50% of those homes in the smart home side, where we're getting an on-cue panel in, we're getting a structured wiring panel in, possibly some network drops, some security in there as well. We work with a lot of builders in those spaces to provide those things. So we're probably about halfway through all of those rooftops, and every month, every week, if you talk to our CEO, we're trying to get into more and more of those homes. How can we get into more and more of those houses to offer these services that, in all intents and purposes, people need and they want. And so we're really seeing great traction across that is, born on the back of the hard work that our electrical team did and made those relationships and did those things and got in with homeowners and built that trust. And now we're coming in and bolting on services, everything from the security to the smart home to generator services, things like that we're trying to get, squeeze as much juice out of the lemon, as they say.
No,
So,
perfect.
David,
Well, yes.
If I could add to that. So if we talk about trends, right, part of this, that's one of the trends I've seen in our own dealer program, right? Is you take someone like Greg, who wasn't in this space 7 years ago, right? In the high voltage side, and now is in, or at least recognizes the opportunity. And obviously you can hear from the success, and we're hearing that everywhere. So it's one of those things that I think I mentioned earlier, as you and I talked, one of those things that keeps me up at night about our own industry is, are we recognizing some of these megatrends like Elizabeth spoke about, right? And are we trying to stay too siloed sometimes, right? Should we be looking outside the box like companies like Greg did, right? Where we're looking at other opportunities. And I think the smart home is a prime example of, hey, here is a mega trend, here is an opportunity. And unfortunately, I think sometimes we're probably a little too siloed in our thinking, and we need to be breaking out of that a little bit.
No, appreciate that. And, to your point, Quentin, it's interesting. The data that Elizabeth's sharing with all of us, we're seeing this through Greg. And of course, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but I suspect through many of the groups that you work with throughout nationwide. So want to transition over to Jason. Jason, is always great to see you, my friend. If you wouldn't mind, I suspect everyone here knows who you are, but just in case, if you wouldn't mind quickly introducing yourself and just sharing where you think where the state of the market is.
Okay. First and foremost, just the two housekeeping items. Want to thank David and his team for putting this whole thing together. I've always enjoyed jumping on for David's Megatrends series. I think he's kind of setting the bar for what webinars should be coming out of COVID. Many of us got kind of webinar fatigue, and I think David has changed kind of what those look like and what they should be. So huge shout out to him and his organization. Other piece of housekeeping item, just want to make sure on behalf of not just Residio, but every manufacturer, every partner in the industry, we want to make sure everybody in Florida is being safe and secure over the next 24 to 48 hours. Protect your families, protect your businesses. It'll all be ready to go again next week. So be safe and through this weird storm. It looks like it's gonna maybe get a little nasty. With that being said, Jason Lutz, I am Residio. I have a couple different jobs at Residio. I sweep the parking lot at the office. I'm known to wash Scott Harkins's car every now and then. But no, I have really the two coolest jobs, in my opinion, in the entire company and really in the entire industry. I get to be involved in all of our industry affairs. So I get to work with organizations all over the Americas, really. Places like SIA and ESA and different associations to kind of make sure that the manufacturers are being represented in the future of our industries. And then I also get the opportunity to spend a bunch of time with really some very, very cool younger people in our industry with our brand ambassador program. If you're familiar with it, then awesome. If you're not familiar with it, I would tell you to look at LinkedIn. You can't see a LinkedIn post during the day without seeing one of the brand ambassadors posts. So I get the opportunity to lead that team. And it's really been the joy of my 20 years at Residio. Where I see the future going is really all over the place. it's no longer the future. That's the biggest misconception. It really is the present. We have to adapt and move, or we're going to become irrelevant. We our industry is always changing. It's always adapting. If, 20 years ago, if we didn't start selling cellular radios, we were probably going to be out of business. Today, our industry has very, very close to 100% attach rate on cellular radios and interactive services. So the future is today. I would challenge everybody to not just listen to this webinar, but continue to look at the industry, follow Elizabeth's research, look at the trends coming. Are they all going to stick? No. There's a lot of things that we've all seen over the last 20 to 30 years that didn't stick. But there's a whole lot of them that have. And the ones that do tend to make us all a lot more money. And like David mentioned earlier, tend to drive more recurring revenue.
Yeah,
So.
no, Jason, it's interesting what you just shared. Whereas that's not necessarily specific just to the smart home. It's just business in general, right? I mean, even with ourselves. And I can't overemphasize enough what you just said. It is so important for each and every single one of us as leaders of our respective businesses or the leader of our respective business to always keep our antenna out as to what change is happening and be ahead of the curve. And as you'd mentioned, we don't necessarily have to do everything that's in place, but we can't be stagnant. What worked 5-10 years ago, that's not where it is that we are today and where it is that we're going. So 100% agree with you. I actually would like to interject and thank you and John for participating as well in today's special session. I actually, if you wouldn't mind, I think this is going to be a question for Greg. I want to actually just quickly hop in. I think this is actually a very important question. So Greg, if you wouldn't mind addressing this really quickly.
Sure.
For Ann Campo. Question is, how can a traditional security company with no electricians on staff and no relationships with builders develop these customers? I know that that's a part of what your model, but if any thoughts, and if anyone else has any thoughts about this as well, but Greg, if you wouldn't mind taking that one, please.
How do you get out and get clients? For us, we feel like it's making those relationships with the builders. I would drive neighborhoods and find new builds and call builders and try to find a way to get in front of them, because clients they're great and you want to have the ability to go out and find those clients themselves. But we feel like the builders are the way to go, because they're going to build specs and we want to make sure that we can get as much wire as we can into those specs, and we want to help them deliver a product that's going to be not only beneficial for us, but for them as well. As electricians, we're in the catbird seat, because we're going to have the opportunity to bid on every single house, because every single house gets full electric. It's a no-brainer, right? It's adopted into what is considered normal for a home. In 10, 20 years, all of this smart home will be adopted in the same way. But right now we're trying to make those contacts with builders and educate them on the benefits of having smart home wiring in their home.
So David, if I could add to that, right? It's something
Please.
that, again, being kind of a down the street kind of sales guy, right? It's building this relationship, right? And I would say that, Greg, you may be a little bit of a, variable here, and that you're doing both. But I know of a lot of electricians that prefer not to do the low voltage and may subcontract that out to a third party, right? So I think there's kind of two relationships you could develop here, right? I think I'm looking at Christian's answer here. Again, another one of our premier dealers. He's built over the years a strong relationship with builders, and he has positioned himself as that low voltage solution provider. And he builds these impenetrable, relationships, and he's done that, and it's taken time. But I think there's also, what I would call, there's relationships that security companies could make with electricians. There's electricians out there that probably don't want any part of this, just like there's some security guys that want no part of maybe some of these other siloed areas. But I think it's those relationships. It's hitting the streets. It's just basic sales 101 of just reaching out and starting those relationships and seeing what opportunities are available.
Yeah, I completely agree. And thank you again, Christian, for adding your thoughts to this as well. So, so I'd like to let's transition to a couple of the prepared questions. So Elizabeth, we'll start with you if you wouldn't mind. And when we talk about that of the of DIY, so how is DIY impacting the market in terms of like expansion, possibly like new choice or meeting new demand from new segments?
Yeah, I think a few years ago, everybody was very, very concerned, that let's say Ring was going to come in and take everybody's business. And certainly it's there's a lot more competition now, but there's a new segment of the market that has been able to get tapped into. So in the traditional world of professional security, you had a certain kind of priced monthly contract with 3 years or something required to sign. There were agreements, there were installation, hardware costs up front, and these new DIY security solutions have really brought in a new customer, right? And that new customer is getting a taste of what does home security feel and look like when I experience it. And then those are the ones who are also telling us they're going out and getting professional monitoring after they already have a self-monitoring solution. So I think that the expansion is going to come with the foot in the door, right? You're getting somebody in to have that experience. They're recognizing it. I mean, I'm a good example. I don't have a lot of technology in my home. I really didn't want a video doorbell. I honestly, I was like, why we need that? But I have 3 kids and my husband installed it, and now my kids ring the doorbell and I know they're home and they talk to me through the doorbell. And there's all sorts of things that actually happen outside my door that I'm aware of now, including the understanding that my children are safely home at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So there's the peace of mind benefit that honestly, even being in the business, I didn't really think much about myself until I had the experience. And then once I did, I very much appreciated it and figured out, oh, well, so how does this work? How can I go look at things when they're happening? How can I see my delivery? My packages are there and safe. So I think the experience centers are going to come out, how the builders are introducing technology to their customers. I mean, I was just at a builder event that was talking about, how you show all this technology to the consumer and kind of package it in a way that they can easily understand, and the upselling opportunities, right? It's all about upselling. And apparently if you offer an upsell, they will take it. That is another thing I learned from that home builder show, including black and matte are in. But, things like touchless faucets and even, the health and wellness factors, understanding the air quality in your home, having smart vents that tell you things about the conditions of your home that frankly, a few years ago, you might never even have thought of. I mean, really, you wouldn't have even thought of it until COVID hit. And now there are, concerns to understand if you have any asthma or lung conditions, what else is going on in your home. So, I mean, the market really has expanded, and it's also the number of devices that are in homes now, right? The average household has 16 connected devices now. My house, I have 43 connected devices, which I know because I have a Plume pod with a managed network that allows me to have parental controls, right? I can take my phone and I can shut off all the Wi-Fi in the house for the kids. So there's use cases that people, especially people with children, right? Households with children are a target market. Once the kids are out of the house, I will then be that older person looking for technology later to help me remain in my home safely and independently. So that lifetime value as well, with understanding what consumers are doing in their 20s, their early 20s, and then as they go through life, whether they get married or are just buying a house, kids or no kids, there's certain activities and behaviors that come with certain life stages. And that's also a big area that we cover in terms of the triggers for what's going to make that purchase happen.
No, thank you, Elizabeth. I mean, average of 16 devices, nearly 45% of the end users expect for us to be offering these? I mean, I hope everyone's paying attention to these things. These are really, really important numbers and metrics. If you're in the residential market and not taking advantage of these opportunities, you're leaving dollars on the table. And ask. If you don't ask, you're not going to receive. So, I mean, just a few takeaways. As I mentioned, I think I'm jotting more notes down than everyone else.
Yeah,
Meaning
David.
in the audience. Please.
Yeah,
Quentin.
David, one of the things that I see, in at least the comments that we're hearing from our dealer network, right, is that all of this advertising and marketing that these new players, Elizabeth, are doing, right, are raising awareness across the entire, the population. So, everyone is already educated a little bit on what a doorbell is and what maybe some of the benefits are, right? So these requests are now coming into our, our traditional dealer channel. But, I always knew back in my day as a dealer that when local companies advertise heavily, it affected me too. It made my phone ring even more. And I think we're seeing the same thing now in the smart home space, right? Is all the money that's being pumped in is just raising the awareness and the opportunity for all of us.
No, absolutely. Definitely on the same page. Kirk, thank you very much for your nice comment. I do agree. I'm partial, but I'm very honored to have the members of the team that are on this panel today. So thank you. We appreciate you being here. And Brad, we're going to get to your question in just a moment. Also, Bill, just really quickly, you are correct. I mean, Elizabeth did state, I believe, 15 categories or so. And I don't want to speak, we're obviously not a manufacturer. I don't want to speak to this, but I do agree. I mean, generally speaking, it's not like a one size fits all. I don't know, Quentin, if you want to speak to this, to the comment that Bill just made, but I think it's a matter of partnering with the groups that are going to help you to be able to provide that solution that your customers are vying for. I don't know, Quentin, if you want to speak to what.
Yeah, so we are, so I would say at Residio, we're kind of uniquely positioned, right, in that we have this huge HVAC contractor space that we serve now, right, talking about some of the things Jason did with the thermostats and the other solutions that we have there, right, and then we have this security network, and we haven't quite figured it out yet, but I think there's this opportunity across, if you think of the thousands of homes, each of those trades are in each and every day, and there's this opportunity to maybe cross-sell. But we're still figuring that out. But I do believe that, to the Bill's question there, right? You can't be the expert on all of it, right? You're probably going to have to maybe work with some of the other trades. I know Christian earlier, from one of his comments, just knowing what he does, he actually he knew he had to be the guy that put a smart thermostat in. Builders were requesting it. He needed to be able to do that, right? So what he did is he brought in an HVAC professional to train his team for a week, on how to put thermostats in. And again, but he created this relationship now with someone that, hey, when things get a little more complicated, he's got that trade to go to that, again, maybe not in his wheelhouse, but it is in his. And again, he can, take advantage of the opportunity there. But I do believe that, again, is, you look at the differences between low voltage and, the high voltage that like Greg does. He's uniquely positioned that he can take advantage of both, but the average security company probably can't take advantage of that. They're not, their insurance is going to dump them in a heartbeat if they start putting in light switches and things, right? So, these are relationships. It's still, it's a ways to go. I would say that as busy as everyone has been for the past few years through COVID here, everyone that I speak to has as much work as they can possibly handle. It's been a little slower to adopt some of these relationships because somebody is so busy. Everybody is so busy right now.
We joke and say that I'm honestly trying to remove the low voltage moniker from the industry and talk about it being home technology and high voltage, right? Like it really is starting. Low voltage has such a negative connotation to it, really, and it's maybe a little bit outdated. Builders have a lot of just negative association with it because they've been burned so many times by people that said they could do what they promised to do and weren't able to do it, and technology kind of bit them in the backside. So we're trying to say that it's not necessarily just low voltage, it's home technology. What are we doing to make the home be able to take all these 15, like Bill says, 15 different categories of smart home space? What can we do for a builder that allows them to, tell his homeowner that they can get those 15 things? Obviously, it's the network, right? It's making sure that the home is wired properly for a network. And I don't necessarily have to be an expert in a smart sprinkler system. But can I pull a Cat 6 to the sprinkler system? Yeah, I can. I don't have to be an expert in pool control either, but I make sure that if one of my clients has a pool, I pull a data to that pool equipment so that they're not relying on Wi-Fi to heat or cool their pool or whatever it is they're doing there. I want to make sure that hardwire is there. And so we're trying to educate our builders and their clients and make sure that we can provide those types of those wires to those spaces. The key to a strong wireless system in a home is lots of wires. And that's something that, we're trying to convince builders and homeowners of every single day.
I think that's a really good point. The infrastructure of the home, if you don't get the network right, nothing is going to work well. And so builders really emphasizing the wiring and that network infrastructure is going to pay off. And then looking for devices that are also looking to solve that wireless connectivity problem, before the consumer tries to figure out who they're supposed to call, right? Are they calling their their cable provider, or broadband rather now, since pay TV is kind of dying off, or the manufacturer. And I do think we're going to see a world of support services, in the future. Right now, consumers, only 5%, I think, of smart home device owners have any kind of support service. But as the network grows in complexity, there's going to be a willingness to pay, along with willingness to pay for services that tell you about what's going on in your home environment.
Yeah, so I'm going to just add to that, right, Elizabeth, I think that's really a key thing, right, is if you think about the experiences that we're trying to convey that a homeowner can end up with, right, they're completely dependent on that backbone, which is the Wi-Fi network that's in the home, right? And I would say that that's one area that more and more dealers I talk to that just a few years ago would never have thought about selling that customer a mesh Wi-Fi network, realize it has to become part of their offering today if they're going to be in the smart home space, because that camera that they want, these other things that they want to work well are not going to work well if there's not a good Wi-Fi backbone, like whether it's Ubiquiti or Eero mesh system or something of that nature. It's very, very important for that to be a part of that conversation. And it's interesting for these companies. Hey, now they really do become the hero of the home when they literally own the Wi-Fi network and they make little Johnny's iPad work anywhere in the home and everything else is working really well. They really do become that key player in their home technology world now. And Elizabeth, I agree. I think there's a huge opportunity to be that support company. Just like you would have someone that's going to come out and fix your HVAC system. It'd be great to know you have someone that could, make sure your Wi-Fi is working properly and your devices are connected. I think that's going to be a big growing part of what we as an industry could address as an opportunity.
Yeah, all great points. And Quentin, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to actually jump to the next question. Actually, before I get to that, just Brad, Dan, Debbie, and the DIY question. We're going to get to these questions momentarily, and we'll do it in that particular order. So if you'll bear with us just for a couple of minutes. But Quentin, question for you is, so we've been talking about all these opportunities over the last few minutes, but let's look at it from the opposite perspective. What are the consequences for those of us if we don't participate in these smart home trends?
Yeah, so I'm going to kind of use an example that I had years ago as a dealer, right? And we used to do some work for some builders, and maybe people on this call can relate to this, right? And we were trying to stay just in our silo of just doing the security. And then we had a company that came in and they're going to start doing the central vac and the whole home audio and the other pieces. And for a while we resisted that. We said, hey, we're not going to do that, right? And then we found that we started missing out on these jobs because that builder or even that homeowner wants that one person to deal with. So I would say, I think some of the consequences in industry is if we don't start embracing this, are we going to miss that opportunity for the recurring revenue that our industry has relied on, as being such an important part of it? If I'm a homeowner and I'm looking for that solutions provider, and I'm going to start using that word solutions provider instead of just the security guy, right? If he's only going to talk to me about this and is not willing to talk about some of these other things, am I going to want to do business with that person, right? And I think that's the thing that to me is maybe a consequence if we stay too rigid in our own little world right now. Are we going to miss out on these other opportunities? And by missing those opportunities, are we going to miss our opportunity to sell our message of life safety, of the dangers of fire and burglary and all these other things? Are we going to lose that and the recurring revenue that comes with it?
No, 100%. I was just responding to Dan in the chat here. We're a solutions provider, right? It's not just about parts and smarts. And that's part of the complexity with all the things that we're discussing today. So Greg, I'd like to transition a question for you. So from your perspective, what do you believe are like the biggest obstacles in keeping you from integrating that of smart home technology into that of new homes?
We run into some reluctance with builders, and they have, builder habits to where they can build a home and sell it and make the money that they need to make on the home. They don't have to worry themselves with all this stuff. It's a point of it's a pain point for them that they either have been burned in the past, or they're not getting the bang for their buck. There's not a demand for it. Someone is willing to come in, and maybe an older couple is going to buy a home. They have no need for a smart home. You can't convince them to, include it in for resale, because they might not be as educated on the smart home just landscape as it sits. So there's a few things that come into play there, and I see everybody in the chat talking about education, and that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing every single day that we sit down with a builder or we sit down with a client, is we're trying to, I like to compare it to when all home builders put outhouses outside. That's, you put your outhouse outside, and we're trying to get people to bring the outhouse inside. And a lot of times people just met that with a lot of reluctance. I'm sure they're like, no way are we doing that. And really it's along those same lines. We're trying to convince people to do something that they just haven't done in the past. And, once you push through and they get to see the benefit, that's when we get to, start adding on and bolting on services. But it's breaking through that initial reluctance for them to spend dollars on something that they might not realize the value of, or think that their homeowners are willing to pay extra dollars for those amenities.
Yeah, I was going to maybe just jump in and I completely agree with Greg that expectations on the consumer side have changed. The value of technology, especially with the impact of COVID, it's interweaved into our daily lives in ways we don't even recognize. And I mean, who would have thought, 10 years ago that you would say, I'm going to dial some random person to pick me up in a car and pay them to take me somewhere, right? I mean, I would never have done that, right? And I still even question using Uber today on my own for my personal safety concerns, but that's happening all over the place, right? Calling random person, you have no idea who they are, and you're getting in their car and paying them to take you somewhere. And they're actually, I still think, losing a lot of money. Uber I haven't quite figured out the model there, but innovation means you're doing something you couldn't have imagined you would have done. And I think that is what innovation is. And so the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years in our future is going to have innovation. We don't even know what that may be yet, right? It hasn't been innovated. And that just means there's a world of opportunity, particularly if you look at the various ecosystems that can intersect and really bring that whole home experience that I know my mom envisioned in the late 80s with home automation and controls and services. I mean, that's the foundation that's been laid the past 40 or 50 years. And now we're here where, we're in that growing up phase. And I think it will be challenging because it requires investments and partnerships and digital transformation, which is change. And that's very, change is very hard for companies and people to manage through.
Okay, no, perfect. No, perfect. And once again, on the same page as far as that's concerned. So question? So Jason, question for you now. What have you seen in terms of like a shift or industry shift to more of the connected home? I mean, what else do you see shifting in terms of shifts?
It's a great question, David. So we all see the black and white shifts, where more and more customers today are asking us for smart home devices. They may not always buy them, but they're asking our dealer partners or trade partners for connected thermostats, connected water, connected security, connected people. The piece that's not as clear, but I think is a piece that we as an industry have to really dig down deep, and I'll explain why, is really a shift in our people. You look at where we've gone, you look at Elizabeth's data from earlier, we're at about 35-36% attach rate. Now, a huge chunk of that is the DIY. But we set at 19 to 21% for arguably the most, the 20 years of the biggest 20 years of our industry. We never grew. We're growing more today. If we're going to continue to grow more, we're going to have to change our people. More females, more younger people. And people say, Jason, why? Well, why should I add more females to my sales force? Or why should I go out and recruit younger people to join our industry? One, we're all getting old. A whole bunch of us have gray hair like me. But two, those are the people spending money today. If you look at the most recent stats, 2020, we haven't seen the 2021 stats yet, but most recent stats, 2020, 43% of every single house sold in America was sold to a millennial. 83% of all first-time home buyers, 83% were millennials. The good old days of a bunch of old people like me buying houses, we've got our houses. These younger people are going from a connected multifamily unit, a connected apartment, a connected condominium complex, where in that multi-dwelling unit space, they have really jumped all into smart home already. These younger people are going from a smart apartment. They're not going to go backwards to a dumb house. They want a smart house. You look at the female piece of it. 48% of the buying decisions in the home, not the home itself, but in the home, whether I'm buying an appliance or a new TV or a connected device, 48% of the buying decision is solely the female purchaser in the home. The male purchaser is only about 30% of the sold purchasing power. So 70% of the purchasing power is either completely female driven only, or my wife is telling me what I'm going to agree with.
Surprised some of those numbers aren't higher.
Exactly. I was going to say those numbers probably need to go up, Jason.
They are in my
They
home.
probably do. Right, so these are 2021 numbers, but that's our consumer in the future. Our consumer is people who don't look like me. So if my buying customer is people who don't look like me, maybe my people who are selling, installing, supporting also shouldn't look like me. I would challenge everybody on this, this town hall to think outside the box. It's interesting. Millennials have had we've kind of had this black eye and say, well, millennials are all lazy. They don't want to work. At Quentin's convention, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, we had a speaker, a guy by the name of Jason Dorsey. If you had the opportunity to follow him, I would go follow him. But he talks about millennials and getting millennials on board and selling to millennials. Completely changed my way of thinking on these younger people. They're actually very, very good. They do want to work. I think the Gen Zs are even better than them. I think the Gen Zs are the ones who are going to get us to the next level of connected home. So it's not always just about the widgets. It's about how we sell, support, and even manufacture. We have to be different on the manufacturing side as well.
Well,
So-
and the selling side, I mean, the relevance placed on online purchasing is, I mean, if you look at online buying now versus, 10, 20 years ago, it's crazy. I mean, the Gap, I just reported they lost $50 million so far this year, retail clothing store. So how consumers get services and products is also changing, how they research them and make those decisions. And I think that gets a little bit to the local versus national presence of specific brands in the home security space. That local community, consumers going into their hometown and figuring out a security provider who lives close to them, and is considered maybe more trusted perhaps than a national provider, which aren't that many of. When you think about how consumers get things, that services, a lot of it is local and it's built around the community and it's regional and it's specific to that community's needs, which in California could be different than Texas, than Boston, Massachusetts. So those local regions, I think, are also going to drive a lot. I think that's going to be interesting to play out, particularly as we watch, Amazon and Google and these national global companies, get their hands into the space.
Absolutely. Quentin, do you mind answering Jonathan's question really quick?
Yes, we do work
Yeah.
with mesh networks.
Okay, perfect. I figured that would be a quick one. So Elizabeth, I'd like to actually jump in. And by the way, once again, Brad, Dan, Debbie, and the question about DIY, we're going to get to that momentarily. But Elizabeth, I'd like to ask you a couple of questions. We'll start with one at a time. So consumers, right, they typically seek local security providers, right? Do you believe, will this change in the future with the introduction of tech giants and more of the nationals? What are your takes on, your take on that?
Well, I mean, I think I don't know if I have the answer there. We do have a lot of forecasts that we can look at, and we do think that if you go Google security solutions, Simply Safe and Ring are going to come up first, and so that's what the local security dealers are competing with, which is a lot. If you just think of the power of the search. So I personally believe that consumers are going to lean into the local and community. However, the younger generations buy differently and view things differently. And, they don't even necessarily want, a lot of the younger generations they're not moving out of their parents' house. They're not buying houses as much. They're not having children as much. I mean, there's things that are happening with younger generations that are unusual, that's kind of backwards on the housing and population, right? Households are going to shrink over time because we don't have the population growth that we used to, which means you have less households to be forecasting for. And that's really interesting in models when you're forecasting specific product growth, and then you look at baseline numbers that plug into that model. So there's some things going on macro that I think will be interesting to play out. But I don't know if I have the full answer on the national versus local, although those tech giants, like Quentin said earlier, they're raising the familiarity, the visibility, and the value proposition is becoming more clearly understood, which I think is going to have a positive impact on the market, no matter what.
Yeah. So David, I got to add to that. So that's like one of the biggest conversations that I have with some of my, most trusted people in this business, right? Is if you think about, look, I'm 30 years in the industry, right? And I think about the sons and daughters of the customers I had, right? That shop completely differently than the way their parents did, right? Their parents would, maybe back then open up a yellow page, find 2 or 3 companies, get their quotes, have somebody out there, right? But you think about this generation today, and for most of us on this call today, right? We're so used to looking at something on Amazon real quick or finding something online, making our purchasing decision and looking for the buy button so we can buy, right? And again, I don't know what this looks like because e-commerce is like this whole other thing that can cost you a fortune to get into. But I do think we have a group of consumers today that they have learned to shop a certain way, and they come to our industry and they're ready to buy, and they're looking for more than what they see on the typical websites in our industry, which unfortunately in many cases are just glorious about us, about our company. And I do think that's what can be leveraged. I saw the question earlier about how do you compete with these DIYs, right? One, I don't completely agree that you are competing with that DIY customer. I think that's a different person. But I think to compete, you're going to have to be able to explain very concisely what the value of what you do and how it's different, right? In the relationship that you're going to bring into this, But it's one of the things that, again, I think about a lot, right? And we have a few companies that are starting to create like their own small e-commerce sites where they're allowing consumers to go on and purchase a basic system with professional installation, where the consumer can kind of pick out what they want. They can set their install date, they can purchase and have someone come out and install what they just did. And I think that will be something that we'll have to somehow figure out a little bit, because I think that, my boys, I look at as examples all the time. They can't understand why anyone would have to come out their house to do anything, unless it's to actually fix the appliance or do something. They can't understand, because of the world they've grown up in, any goods or services that they've ever needed, they've gone and searched for it, clicked a button, and it showed up in a box a couple of days later. So that's something that I think is a challenge. Like Elizabeth, I don't know what the answer to it is yet, right? But I do look at that as one of those obstacles, or I'm not going to say obstacles, I'm going to say opportunities, right? That we have to figure out, because I think we're going to have to make some of that shopping experience available online, which is the way these people do things. Yeah. So.
Well, and just to add, the service industry across the home is going crazy everywhere. I mean, look at television and what's happening with over-the-top video and Netflix and ESPN and HBO. It's an unbundling of cable. It's with all this consumer choice with no contracts. And let me tell you what's happening. There's going to be a rebundling, right? Because there is too much choice. You have 22% of consumers who have 9 OTT services. That's, 1 in 4 having 9 or more services. That's not going to get sustained over time. There's going to be the bundles and the rebundling over the top instead of cable, and a lot of money lost in translation. So this disintermediation is happening all over the place, and figuring out how to get into directly to the consumer to capture that reoccurring revenue and the ease of selling it, installation and servicing. I mean, there's a lot there, but it's happening across the board in the home, and the subscription service model is not going away. I mean, it is growing everywhere, and that's how the new consumers used to buying. They're going to be used to, having monthly reoccurring, and it's a monthly service fee. And that's how they'll be used to products being delivered over time even.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I mean, I don't know if you want to expand upon that, but like a follow-up question, Elizabeth, on that is in terms of the actual buying process for that of the end user, the consumer. It's moved towards that of an online purchase. Maybe you can talk a little bit about how this buying process has changed for the end user.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of searching online and researching products. Now we know security system purchases, the triggers are, the top trigger is something has happened in your home to a security event that is going out and triggering you to buy something. And I think where the industry wants to get is, let's get the security solutions in before, your house gets broken into, or before anybody is, perhaps not in a safe situation. So moving that trigger up so that it's not just a result of a security incident, I think is where a lot of the players are spending time on showing the value proposition. What's beyond just be able to keep your environment safe? What are the other things that I can tell you that are going on that you're going to care about and be willing to pay for? And your pets and your children and your packages and the perimeter of your home, your yard, those kinds of things are what people want to know about, because those become where the threats are as far as safety goes. And then water and fire, smart water leak detectors. I mean, if any house is getting built without that, it's just kind of dumb, because they're pretty cheap to put into a home if you consider how much damage can take place with a water leak or a fire. And then, I mean, insurance is coming into play. Look at what State Farm just did with Google and ADT. So there's finally enough devices in the market that they're going to be able to prove out the mitigated risk. You know, insurance companies have all these actuaries going on in the background, and the model to prove, hey, if you have this, that, and the other, it's going to ensure you don't have this happen. And we're finally getting to that position, and State Farm really hammered that home with their latest investment with ADT.
Yeah. And just to add to that point, I think if we look at a lot of the, and I think the leak detector, Elizabeth, is a great example, right? Here's this really low cost device that has a lot of perceived value, can, you know, prevent major grief from happening in your life. You know, I'm a person who had a major water leak in a home that caused issues that were thousands of dollars and a lot of sleepless nights putting the house back together. But I think that, you know, one of the things that I've always wondered, or at least thinking about exploring, right, is if as an industry, right, if we look at the way some of these new entrants are capturing eyes, right, where maybe it's you start with the doorbell and you build an ecosystem now with the security and the other pieces, right? What's preventing us as an industry, right? If I was in business today, would I be advertising around the holidays a doorbell? And you know, the lead that came in for that doorbell now is at least a conversation that I can have about all these other products and services. And again, that's where I go back to that. If there's a takeaway here in this call is let's think about, are we too siloed in what we're doing, right? Think about all these opportunities are out there, things that we could market to become a lead for the security system, because our industry, like Elizabeth said, it's always been event driven. It's 30 years that I've been in this industry, right? If break-in happens in their life, something in the neighborhood, you know, dangers of fire, family, you know, new kid, those are the things that make you think about security. Well, we have all these other products and services today that are perceived kind of outside of that, like a doorbell. And why not advertise that as a way to now capture and have that conversation about all of your services that you can do, you know, that turn into a whole home system with all the bells and whistles. So lots of opportunities here, guys. Yeah.
Yeah, completely agree. And we just have a couple more questions, and we're going to get to some of the more questions from the audience. So Quentin, really quickly, what do you believe are the biggest challenges security companies face as they look to deliver these types of solutions?
Yeah, so I think the biggest challenge is look, we I think on this call have said it, like there's going to be some new skill sets involved here, right? There's going to be a new way of looking at these opportunities. You know, hey, I was a dealer for 21 years before being on the manufacturing side, and I know how it is, man. We are so busy each and every day doing what we've always done that thinking about some of these new things is we just don't have time for it. And I would say that every now and then it's good to maybe get away from things, look at the opportunity, think about the things you would have to do to implement that. Lean on your manufacturing partners, lean on this industry to learn more. I think we're going to be in this together as an industry and as a group. We're going to learn from each other. That to me is what's been so valuable of our premier network is we have 340 dealers that R&D in our network is not research and development. It's rip off and duplicate. So we're all going to learn from each other. You know, you've heard that from John Loud for dozens of years. I probably stole it from him. So that was my rip off and duplicate. But I think that, you know, as we look at this, we have to agree there's going to be some challenges. We're going to have to learn from each other. There's going to be some new skill sets, but let's all be open-minded because, you know, actually, guys, this stuff is getting a lot easier than it was just 5 years ago to put in. You know, the networks in people's homes are better. You know, all the prerequisites are getting better for us to be able to come in and do the things that we do. So just keep an open mind and let's lean on each other as an industry.
Yeah, I agree. I think having an open mind to this is super important. So Greg, how are you ensuring that builders and homeowners are spending their money in the best way possible to take advantage of what's available in home technology today?
You heard Quentin talk about it a little, and we've touched base on a few times. It's developing the backbone of the system and making sure that the builders have a solid infrastructure of wiring. You know, you talk about every TV in someone's home is a smart TV. Make sure it has a data to it. Make sure that you can plug that TV in so that it's not affecting the Wi-Fi in a negative way. Any static device that is going to have data that needs data that like I mentioned before, the pool and the sprinkler, anything that you can plug in and get off the Wi-Fi, plug it in, run the wire, get the wire from point A to point B, stick it on a switch, and make sure that information can flow seamlessly from the network service provider to the device in question, and not have to rely on Wi-Fi to operate those types of devices. If we can plug it in, we want to plug it in. And I tell people that all the time. And if you were here in Texas and sat down with, our design services team over, the past 5 years or so, and you went through COVID, your home was, and you listened to what we had to say, your home was solid when you were home at work, or when you were working from home. Your computers were plugged in. The kids were all home on their tablets, or maybe they were plugged into their computer. The homes that struggled, or the people that struggled, and the calls that we got were, we're not telling you that we told you so, but you have a lot of connected devices in your home, and you're relying on them, to be connected Wi-Fi, and you saved, a couple $100 or $1,000 when you were building your house, and now you have a space that is not conducive to smart home technology. So we really want to make sure that we get wires in the house everywhere that we can. I said that before, the key to a strong wireless network is having wires in the home, and I fully believe that. And if you sit down with me and we talk about your home, I'm probably going to say that more than once, because I want to make sure that I have crumbs to get home on later on. If there's a problem, if I have to add a network, if I have to add something later on, I need a wire, I can use it for my security system, I can use it for my speaker system, for my sound system, for anything that goes as far as that concerned. Conduits as well. Make sure you're getting a conduit to the service from your structured wiring panel. Get a conduit from wherever your structured wiring panel is in the home to the service. That way your home is future-proof for whatever connected device or wire that comes down the pipe. We can make sure that we get it in there. And a lot of our savvy homeowners that are willing to spend some extra dollars on conduits throughout the house, run some conduits throughout your house, and it really gives you an open ability to connect. And I've had homeowners that have put conduits in their homes 10 years ago, asked me to put upgraded wire in their homes. And that's pretty cool to go back to a homeowner that listened to you 10 years ago and says, hey, look, we did put this conduit in to our family room, and now we want to run a Cat 6 here, or we want to, upgrade that wire. The ability to do that is pretty cool. And we recommend to all of our homeowners to get that stuff in there so that you can future-proof that home.
No, makes perfect sense. I happen to be connected right now.
Amen.
As strong as a Wi-Fi as we have, I don't want to rely on that. But anyhow, Jason, quick question for you. So we've been talking about this connected stuff today, right? And generally speaking, for some of us, this could be a little scary / outside the box, right? Outside of our core offerings. How do you advise the groups that you work with, or groups, whether they're existing customers or prospects, how do you advise them to adopt these types of offerings?
It's a great question, David. The easy answer is education. But I would also challenge people to step back and think about it. And it really isn't that scary. I had a conversation recently, and I won't bring up his name, but I'll just, a pretty big dealer in our industry, much smarter than me. And he wanted to argue a little bit about thermostats are too hard. If I replace the customer's thermostat and the system ever breaks for the next 500 years, it's my fault, and I've got to go fix their air conditioner in the middle of the night. And I asked him, I said, do you sell camera systems? Well, of course we sell camera systems. We sell them every single day. I said, interesting, because 5 years ago when I sat in your office and tried to get you to buy our camera systems, you said you don't sell camera systems because you don't want to mess with people's routers. Because if you got to mess with their router, you own it for life. And you went, you got educated, you learned how to do port forwarding, and today your business sells cameras every single day. It really isn't that difficult. I mean, we have a different perspective because we happen to own a very large thermostat company. But homeowners go into Home Depot and Lowe's and Best Buy or wherever they are, and they buy smart connected thermostats, whether they buy ours or any of our competitors that make great thermostats, and they pop the thermostat off the wall, and 8 out of 10 times it's 4 or 5 wires, and they match the colors and they plug it in and it works. It really isn't that difficult. I think we get so scared about that 20% of the time when you pop the cover off and there's 20 wires going to it and it does all kinds of magic stuff. If it does, no problem. Snap it back on and call a pro. The great thing about our industries is there's other great industries just like ours. So pick up the phone, partner with an HVAC contractor, partner with the plumber if you don't want to hook up a smart water valve. It will do a couple things. It will, one, get your system installed and secure your recurring revenue, and you make a whole lot more money. But now you've picked up a referral partner. That HVAC contractor, that plumber doesn't want to sell security. You feed him your leads on installing thermostats or installing water valves, and he or she will feed you their leads, hopefully, it's a two-way street, for security and smart home devices. But the key really is just don't be afraid of it. Go get educated. Resideo, just like all of our competitors, both in the security space and in the comfort space and in the plumbing space, will offer all kinds of free training to you to get you to sell our stuff. So don't be afraid to ask for it. We're here to help you. Our competitors are here to help you. The industry's here to help you. But the reality is, if you don't do it, you will lose customers. And when we had this argument, 10 years ago as an industry, I'm not selling, I don't want to do apps. If I do an app, then I got to deal with the customer's headaches every time. And I had a customer friend of mine, he said, I'm the Southwest Airlines of the alarm industry. I want to get you from point A to point B, very safe, but no frills, because I don't want you to call me in the middle of the night. Well, then all of a sudden, a bunch of kids from Utah with nice shoes and khaki shorts on knocked on our doors and sold our customers stuff that we were afraid to sell them. So get educated. Don't be afraid. Think outside the box and ask for help. There are great dealers out there that will partner with you and help you. And of course, if your manufacturers aren't helping you, then find new manufacturers.
And just to hop on there real quick, when Jason was speaking about that, if we feel like that, if we have that feeling that maybe we need to be more educated and we want to learn more about these products, imagine how our homeowners feel or our clients feel that, we really try to tell them there's no such thing as a dumb question in this space. Ask away. Please lean on us. I hope that somebody asks me a question that I don't know what the answer to, and I get to lean on my partners and I get to talk to people that are smarter than me, right? Like that's really what we want to do is develop that type of rapport with our clients to say, look, you're in a safe space here. I'm going to show you, I'm going to share with you every single thing that I have to offer. And if there's something that we can't figure out together, we're going to bring someone in that can, and, leaning on, all the expertise that, for us that we have with Resideo being a premier dealer. I can pick up the phone and call these guys whenever I want, and they're going to answer my question. They're going to figure out a way for me to offer that service to my client. And if they can't figure it out, they're going to pick up the phone and call somebody who can. Now that hasn't happened yet, but I'm trying to make it work. So.
No, perfect. It's, I mean, I will say to both of you, I mean, these are great insights. I know we're up against a little bit of time, but we have just a couple of questions, and then we have some audience questions as well. So Elizabeth, what not that you've got a crystal ball, as you'd stated a couple of minutes ago, but what are the future services coming, and what do you believe is driving the demand?
Well, consumers are going to be the ones, I think, driving a lot of the future services. And then it's the service providers who are able to deliver. I think it's just to follow up on the last comments, without the security dealers, the manufacturers are going to be in a really hard spot, right? So it's so important for the manufacturers to be supportive of their dealers and to really help them along the way, because there's a dependence there, right? And those relationships need to be strengthened in terms of education, support in the technical sense, but even in the business sense, right? There's these are hard times for any small business, and manufacturers recognize that and are really doing, I think it appears from our view, are doing a lot to make sure the security dealers are well positioned to be able to introduce those new services. You know, anything with a car, you know, the vehicle is the next biggest investment that somebody makes as far as purchases. So that home is number one, and then the car. And certainly if you're somebody who has valuables in your car, or you're a work kind of guy with tools, you know, protecting the what's in the vehicle, I think is going to become more important. The PERS space and independent living solutions, I mean, that's a huge area that I think will be complicated, very fragmented and challenging, but a lot of opportunity and something that's going to be necessary. This remote patient care, the hospital home movement, as well as the baby boomers continuing to get older and really needing technology to be able to be in their homes. Also, cybersecurity. If you're not thinking about cybersecurity, you absolutely should be. This is it just makes sense, right? You're securing the physical part of the home, and now you have all these connected devices that are threats and vulnerabilities for the consumer. And so adding protection to ensure that they don't get hacked and their life data stolen or whatever, you know, is a natural extension of a security provider on the network side and the device side. So certainly would recommend looking at that as a possible add-on. And consumers understand this kind of threat easily. You know, I mean, it's easy to understand. It's also easy to be willing to pay a little bit of money to ensure that your private data is secure. Also, managed services. The work at home movement isn't going away. We still show 35 million households working at home in some capacity. So that's like a third of people. That means you've got a lot of sensitive data going in and out of the house. And if you're that business, you know, now your business is got a threat to it through the consumer home. So businesses paying for broadband network security and making sure things are secure, I think, is also going to become a big deal. There's going to be a lot of blurred lines between, you know, small business and home ownership, right? The people who own small businesses also have a home, maybe even two homes, right? Because maybe they have multiple locations. So they could become a very good customer if you look across that individual's portfolio of possibilities with whatever they've got going on. So there's a lot of opportunity. We're still early in on these added services that will be coming.
Yeah, thank you, Elizabeth. Appreciate that. And tying all these things together, remember, nearly 45% of end users expect for us to provide these types of services, right? So it's all about layering services. But two last quick questions and one quick thing. I believe my good friend Mike Salk is with us today. And I know we don't have time to sing happy birthday, but Mike, happy birthday, my friend. I look forward to seeing you soon. And on to our second from last question. And by the way, in the chat, you all are welcome to say happy birthday to our good friend Mike Salk. His birthday was yesterday. He just turned 35. Just kidding. All right. So Quentin, as we're starting to wrap this up, right? We've got just a couple of quick questions last, and then we'll want to get into some of the audience questions. Anyone has any other questions, please interject them into into the chat or the Q&A. But Quentin, because once again, you and Jason are very uniquely positioned in that you're working, you know, with Greg and many of the Gregs throughout the country and many security companies that are looking out for this. So how are the Resideo Premier dealers, security dealers, starting to address these types of trends?
Yeah, so as I said, I think at the beginning, right, I think we're still kind of at the early part of this in many ways, right, in that they're identifying the opportunity. And I go back to what I said earlier, right, we have to figure out how do we make money at this, right? We come from a model in which we typically do systems at maybe a reduced cost to get the recurring revenue. These products and services are something that, in my opinion, you need to be charging for the total cost plus making good money when you do these types of installations. But I think we're just at the beginning of this in many ways, right? It's been a very strange few years. A lot of the trends that Elizabeth talked about, just everybody working from home, just so many changes in these past 2 years. It's kind of weird that I've lived through this, right? And I'll get to tell this story, I guess, to grandkids down the road one day. But the opportunities are there. Again, I think we're just starting to recognize them. And most importantly, I think that's the initial step, is that there is an opportunity here, recognizing that, and then starting to work with your teams. You don't have to do this immediately. Take your time, start thinking about how are you going to address it, right? What things would you have to do within your company now to take advantage of these opportunities? And again, as Jason said earlier, work with your manufacturers, work with your partners. But again, I think we're early into it. Lots of unknowns still. I think we're all, though, recognizing that this is a mega trend. This is something that we have to address. And I think if we're going to still stay relevant as an industry going forward, we want to figure this out.
Yeah, absolutely, and appreciate that. And as we get to our final prepared question, maybe, Quentin, you're alluding towards that, and maybe Elizabeth, we can start with you. And I'd like for each of you, we'll start with Elizabeth, but what do you believe is like the most critical thing that a security company or like a dealer can do today to help future-proof their business?
I think the most important thing is not running out of cash. I think that's the most important thing for any small business. And so that financing is going to be crucial, especially probably the next 6, 12, 18 months. If you run out of cash, you got a problem. So that's what I'd say on that one.
Yeah, especially with interest rates about to go up, or they are going up. But sorry, I'm digressing. Greg, your thoughts?
Yeah, we recognize that every home eventually is going to be a smart home, right? Like that's our goal, is to get to where that is a reality, and we're at the middle stages of that being adopted across the builder space. And as Elizabeth mentioned, being a solutions provider, we like to consider ourselves a home services company, right? We want to say, hey, look, we're gonna provide the electric, we're gonna make sure that gets done, get you the fixtures that you need. We're gonna do the infrastructure for all the home technology and provide you with generator services. And if you want to do a media room, we're gonna get that squared away, and then we're gonna connect it all together with, whether it be through a security platform like Resideo, put those Honeywell panels in there and make sure we get that all squared away, or we're going to move to a home automation platform like Brilliant and bring it all under one roof there. We want to be diversified because every client is different, every builder is different, and the more and more of those types of services that we can become experts at and provide those types of services, we feel like we've positioned ourselves to be in a pretty good place.
Great. And Jason.
Thank you, David. So mine's a real easy one. Invest in your people. If I look down the list of attendees, I know the vast majority of them. And if I asked any one of y'all one question, I would probably get the same answer. What is your number one challenge and frustration today? It's, I don't have enough people. I need salespeople, or I need installers, I need service people. Invest in your people, get them educated, keep them happy, and they will overdrive success for decades to come.
Absolutely. Completely agree. And Quentin, if you don't mind just rounding up that last question, what's the most critical thing security companies can do to future-proof their business?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that we've done as an industry, right, is making ourselves indispensable to the customers we serve. And I tell you, I think maybe Elizabeth is alluding to, hey, we've got some unknown economic times approaching here soon, right? With interest rates, things are going to change. I know, having been part of this industry for a long time, what happens in those times, look, crime, things of that nature go up. But in many ways, all during COVID, we were indispensable to the communities and the people that we served. And I think we have to stay focused on still staying and keeping that type of relationship, right? That's what makes our businesses hang in there through the toughest of times, is what we do provide. At the end of the day, it's been my mantra for many years, is that we keep bad things from happening to good people each and every day as an industry. And that will definitely see us through to the future.
Yeah, 100% agree with all of these thoughts and sentiments. So I know that we're a little over time, and we really appreciate everyone sticking with us. There's just a few questions that I want to address, and I know, Mike, you've got your hand up. Send me a direct note if you would like for me to promote you to be able to speak, if you wanted to ask a question or share something with us. Otherwise, I'm gonna jump into the questions. So Brad, thank you for being patient. So Brad had asked, how often are you seeing the demand being raised for intelligent analytics or even video monitoring services on residential cameras? I presume that'll be maybe Quentin.
Yeah, so I think, right, the AI piece is I don't think we can even begin to. It's like looking at the night sky and looking at all the stars up there and trying to figure out what that means, right? I think AI is something that, right, is going to be driving every facet of every device that we go forward with, right? I think cameras are just going to get it smarter and smarter. I think that if there's an initial phase that we're out of in our industry, is that I would say my initial system, even my home, was like a 4-year-old. It was constantly tapping me in the shoulder, telling me things I didn't want to hear, or asking me questions I didn't want to answer. I think what AI brings to us in our industry is going to be smart, intelligent systems that notify us of the things that we want to be notified and that are critical for notification. Yeah, so I think AI, particularly on the camera side, I think we've all had the initial systems which would just bombard you with notifications. Having smart systems that are telling you, is this a vehicle, an animal, a person? You know, is this the delivery guy that just dropped a box? Telling you the things that are important for you. You know, I've always said, hey, if you could ask a question to a consumer of what would you like your home to tell you each day, you know, answer it from your home's point of view, the things that are important. I think that's what AI is going to do, is allow us to get those answers down to very specific things.
Perfect. Thank you, Quentin. Appreciate that. This question comes from Dan de Blasio. So his question is, with many connected devices in home, who is responsible to ensure these devices cannot be hacked to access the homeowner's network, i.e. like the IoT, etc.? And I'm not sure who would like to take that one.
Well, I mean, I can hop in real quick, because we do provide network services for, you know, for our clients. And, you know, just like when you sit down with a client and people will ask that, can this equipment, or can what you're providing, can it be hacked? And my answer has to be yes. I mean, absolutely, it can be. I'm probably not the guy that should be securing it if you're asking me that question. I also like to tell people, you know, we're talking about, you know, high level encryption that people are going to try to hack into. It's not like a baby monitor in someone's room that was easily accessible, right? So, you know, the network security that we provide is pretty robust, and we can, you know, we go over that with our clients. And a lot of times people will want to do that themselves. So really what you have to ask yourself is at what level of protection are you trying to achieve, and then discuss those the parameters, the safety parameters that we have in place to ensure that, you know, the devices that you have connected are protected. And we feel real comfortable being able to provide network services for builders and for homeowners, whether it be the Ubiquity platform or the Eero platform, that provide that level of protection for them, for probably 98% of the public. I'm just throwing that number out there. It's a ridiculous number, a high number. And then, like I said, I'm not, you know, providing government level security or those types of things for someone, although those are the fears that live inside our customers' heads, and they want to feel comfortable knowing that their information is protected. Information theft or identity theft is definitely on people's minds at all times, and so we want to make sure that we you know, assuage those fears and talk about, you know, how we are protecting them, and how the devices that we're using are also protected on that level. So.
Perfect.
I would just add to that. I know it's a major concern of any manufacturer putting anything connected, right? But I would say, hey, this is another reason to use a pro, as Greg said, right? You look at most hacking incidences, it's because the customer left the default passwords, et cetera. Hopefully that's why you're using a pro, to make sure that network is installed with something a little bit more robust. And I just saw Christian Hess's comment there. There are companies out there. I can think of one that will actually be at our Connect conference, and they sell a suite of services that you can purchase that will monitor your system, give you a weekly, monthly report of any, attempts at trying to pie hole your network. There are companies out there if you want that level to take another step. And it looks like Christian's already learning how to make money on that too.
Amen.
Nice.
Yeah.
I think that's the theme of today, right? It's all about layering services for more
That's it.
RMR,
More
more
RMR.
value.
That's it.
It's all about this device. It's how do we become more like providers
Yes.
of this device, right?
Yep.
So I know we've got just a couple of questions. Debbie, it's been a long time. Hope that you are well. I believe you're still with us. So Deborah O'Mara asked the question, any thoughts on whether security is a lead-in technology, or if consumers are leading with automation and convenience and then adding security? Not sure who'd like to take that.
I'm going to just say, I think I'm going to start it with, I think it's kind of going both ways, right? I think for the first time, like I said earlier in one of my comments, we have an opportunity to kind of get to develop a relationship or start a conversation outside of just the security realm, right? And we're now able to have conversations just outside of the lead-in, which was typically all the way we always got our business, which was from that event that happened that made them think about our products and services. Again, I talk to dealers every day that phone call to their company was initiated because I had I'm thinking about seeing the kids get home safely with a camera, or maybe it's the water sensor or something of that nature. So I think at least, I'd love to hear the rest of the panelists, but for me, it's almost 50-50 right now where it could lead in from. Yeah.
In a perfect situation, when we're talking with the builder, I absolutely want to include a security system in their home and not rely on the customer to make that decision. So I want the builder to provide that security panel system, doors, windows, glass breaks, the motion, siren, spares in the attic. Like I want to build a system that is for that home, not necessarily for the homeowner. And then when we get a chance to talk to the homeowner, now we have a really great space to talk to them about is you already have the security system in your home, and we can discuss how that'll work for you. And a lot of people decide to take advantage of the monitoring services, and that's obviously what we're looking to do, but we try to attack it from that side. So in that sense, it really is, we're leading with that. When we go to our builders, we want to say, hey, look, you have the wires, or the walls are open. We want to get the wires in, but we also want to provide the whole entire system and not rely on a third party to come in or somebody else to come in after the fact. We want to make it real clean for our builders to provide that system for their client. Now, a lot of builders look at the cost and go, man, these guys can go get it for free or sign up with a ADT or sign up with you guys later on after the fact. That's not something that I have to shoulder. So in that case, I'm going to agree with Quentin and say I see it on both sides, where some builders decide that they want to provide it because they've dealt with the headaches of not, and they see the benefits of providing it. But the builders that don't, then we're going the other route and trying to get the network enabled services in there and get all the other wiring in there, and then go after the security on that side of it. So it is just to mirror what Quentin had said. We're seeing a lot of those same things. Some builders want to do it, some builders don't.
And from our data, so again, we're surveying 10,000 households every quarter, and the drivers for smart home and security solutions, specifically the value proposition is security and safety first, convenience, and then energy savings, right? So energy is also right there. And I think that's where the economy and what's going on may get people really looking more closely at their energy bills, potentially could drive more interest in the smart thermostat with that ability to control how much energy is being used in the home automatically.
As a guy who has sold security for the better part of my entire life, I hate that I'm going to give the dissenting answer here, but I actually disagree. As much as I hate to say it, I think the consumer, now maybe on the pro side, us pushing it, absolutely, we lead with security first and foremost, as we should. But I think when you talk to the consumer is leading with the the lifestyle, by the way, can it do security? I think
Yeah, but
more
the
than it ever.
lifestyle, Jason, is about securing their home and their anxiety and their safety. So I'm going to argue with you on that one, given the decades of research we have and the consumers telling us that security is the reason they're buying security products. All the attached services coming later, though, I think are convenient and adding value for sure. But that core proposition, I think, is still there. So sorry, I have to jump in on that one.
No, I agree it's still there, but I think that the lay consumer is more than they ever have is leading with a connected lifestyle. And, by the way, can you do my security? We're seeing that more than we ever have. And I hate to say it because I'm an alarm geek.
Well, I wouldn't recommend dropping the security proposition.
Oh God, no.
I
No,
keep
no.
that at the top of the list.
No.
No, I can see where both of you are coming from. I won't, numbers aren't good, they aren't bad, they just are. We'll leave it at that. One final question is coming from our good friend Scott Goldfein. So any guesses the role that AI and robotics / drones might come into play in the smart homes and security / safety offerings? And he also states he's seen more and more robotic mowers around his neighborhood as an example. So I'm not sure if anybody has any thoughts on that.
So I don't know where Scott lives, but you're not going to see that on a Louisiana lawn because it grows too fast. Right? So maybe that's someplace else. But I do think, as I said earlier, I think the AI piece of it, right? I don't even know if we don't know what we don't know yet. I mean, it's really, I foresee systems in the future where maybe the video identifies the people who are supposed to be in the home and that aren't supposed to be in the home, and it changes completely the types of sensors that we put in. I think AI is going to be a big contributor to the products and solutions that we sell in the future, and they're going to change it in ways that I don't think we can even see it yet. Yeah, but it is here to stay. Definitely, AI is huge. Yeah,
I agree 1,000% with Quentin. I think that we are on track to, as our homes, as our cars, as anything that we interact with becomes smarter and smarter, that artificial intelligence is going to be something that's just a part of our lives, whether they, you scan our eyes and that's going to be, what the room temperature becomes and how the shades get pulled and what music gets turned on and what channel gets turned on, and like all those different things that are, just probably a dream right now, but for our kids will be part of the norm for how they live and act in this world. That'll be something that I think will be more and more put on the table in every single build. Right now, we don't have to. I don't have to mess with robots in people's homes just yet, and I'm thankful for it.
Yeah, and I won't say it doesn't freak me out a little bit too, right? So
it's pretty notable. Amazon purchasing iRobot for
for one purpose, to map your house. Yeah,
1.7 billion. There's a reason behind that.
Map your house, know where everything's at, how it's positioned.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
It's called the data, right?
Yeah, it's all about data. Yeah, correct. So
Interesting. Well,
good stuff, David.
Yeah, no, I know we're literally just wrapping up. Christian, thank you very much for your thoughts on how you sell lifestyle systems that happen to do security. There is a final question from Jonathan. I'm not sure, Quentin, if either you or Jason want to quickly address this. Does Resideo plan to move into network hardware to help support their devices? Not sure if you can even address that or not, but
Resideo is always looking at different technologies and different things to grow content into the home. You look just this past year with our acquisition of First Alert, that brought us connected smokes, connected carbon monoxide detectors, more connected devices that our pro dealers can sell in the home. Just, sit back and wait. I wouldn't, above my pay grade.
Well,
he answered it. Yeah.
Well, I will say this, I am definitely looking forward to the future. I know we're talking about some things that are going to be happening here in the future. I'm super excited. Elizabeth, thank you. Greg, thank you. Quentin, Jason, thank you. And to Residio, thank you. And most importantly, to everyone that stuck with us till the end. I know that we're considerably over time, but time flies when you're having fun. This is going to conclude today's Megatrends in the industry, discussing that of the smart home. If anyone has any thoughts for a future Megatrends webinar, send me an email to dmorgan@sd.marketing. Have a wonderful day, and we all look forward to seeing you at a future event. And thank you all so very much.
Thank you, David.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
David.
Thanks,
Thank
David.
you.